Called to order. Would everybody join me in a pledge of allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Ms. Miller sent out the agenda last week. Staff, are there any changes to the agenda? Oh, okay, good. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as is? Second? Okay, all in favor, raise your right hand. Looks like it's unanimous. All right, so the first order of business on that agenda is something very special, a recognition of outgoing Vice Chair John Campbell. And for that, outgoing Chair Bruce Siebold will do the honors.
So we're here today to recognize John Campbell as a two-term serving commissioner and a stint also as vice chair recently. During his time on the commission, he actively prepared for each meeting to understand the issues that were being discussed. He asked both probing and clarifying questions on discussion items that were being presented. He used his extensive knowledge of Native Islander issues that helped us as other commissioners to inform us of those issues. He demonstrated a firm grasp of how one decision affects another on planning matters, and he represented the Planning Commission at various community presentations and events. So in recognition of these and your achievements and in gratitude for your volunteer service, the Planning Commission and the town of Hilton Island conveys upon you this certificate of appreciation and wishes you all the best in your future endeavors. Thank you, John.
You go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Campbell, for serving with you. And thanks. Now it's my great pleasure to recognize our new planning commissioners. First on my right, Margaret Hewitt, and Jeff Turnbull, and Bill Redmond. So welcome to you all. We're looking forward to working with you. I'd also like to recognize Ellen Whaley, our newly elected vice chair, and thank Commissioner Siebold again for years of fantastic leadership, leading as our chair here of the Planning Commission, and we're delighted that you'll be staying on to guide us into the future. Thank you very much. I also want to take this moment to recognize the staff that works with the Planning Commission. Two members that work with the town's planning department. First, Shay Farrar, principal planner, and she is our staff coordinator for the Planning Commission. Shay, thank you very much for all you do for us. And then Hannah Miller, administrative assistant for the town's planning department. She serves as the commission's secretary. And also would like to just recognize Michelle Mueller for all your continued support. Thank you. Okay. We have one other announcement that I want to make, and this is for action for our next meeting next month. We have the Planning Commission has one subcommittee. It's the Gullah Geechee Land and Cultural Preservation Task Force, and they do very important work for the town. Actually, yesterday, the chairman of that organization provided a wonderful annual report of the work of that committee, Levon Stevens. And also, the town last night just approved their strategic plan for the next 3 years. And item number 7 is, their goal number 7 is preserve, protect, and celebrate Gullah Geechee culture and heritage. So this subcommittee of ours is very important, vital for the work of the island. And this Planning Commission has 2 members that serve on that subcommittee, and that was Commissioner Campbell and myself over the past number of years. And with my new role here and Commissioner Campbell's retirement from the Planning Commission, we're going to be selecting 2 new planning commissioners to serve on that task force. And we'll Okay, next is approval of the June 18th minutes. And may I have a motion to approve those minutes from a commissioner that was in attendance? Second? Okay, any changes? Everything good to go? Okay, all in favor, raise your right hand. Minutes are approved. Next on the agenda, unfinished business, of which there is none. And now we move into new business. We have 1 item to transact today, and I will read the description. It's a request for us, the Planning Commission's initiation of an amendment to Title 16 of the Municipal Code, the Land Management Ordinance, to amend sections 16-3-105H, 16-4-102A6, 16-4-105, and 16-4-102B1 to allow residential workforce housing within the medical district. And following staff presentation and any comments from the public and discussion by us, we will be asked to vote either to approve this request for staff to initiate these changes to the amendment or deny the request. And if we approve it and staff works on the amendment, they will bring it back to us at our August meeting likely for us to review and then make our recommendations for town council. So with that, I'd like to invite Assistant Town Manager Sean Leininger to give us our presentation today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, and welcome to our new members. Thank you for the existing members. Thank you for your continued commitment to the town, and for those new members, welcome and thank you for your ability and contribution to the town as well. So we do have a request for you this afternoon. These are a little bit unique, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time just kind of walk you through why it is and what it is that we go through when we have these types of initiations for amendments to the zoning code, to the land management ordinance. The request before you is coming from a BODE development. They are working in partnership with Novant Health and the Coastal Community Development Corporation, which is a corporation that was recently established to help support workforce housing initiatives, not just on the island, but throughout the Low Country area, particularly in the Beaufort County area. And they've acquired a number of properties throughout the community, throughout Bluffton, and other areas on the mainland side. Their goal in presenting this or asking the Planning Commission to undertake a potential amendment to the medical district is to help support workforce housing related or on property that's owned by Novant Health, and to help support not just Novant Health and the Hilton Head Hospital, but to help support other workforce housing needs on the island. And I'll get into a little bit of the details here in a second about the medical district. There's 2 different ways when there's an initiation or when there's a proposal to amend the text of the land management ordinance. There's 2 ways that can be initiated. One is when the town is proposing amendments, the town manager can direct town staff to propose an amendment, bring it to Planning Commission. It gets forwarded to the town council committee and then ultimately to town council for 2 readings before it's adopted. The other way is that the Planning Commission can initiate changes to the land management ordinance. This is an example of those types of requests. From time to time, we do receive private requests from property owners, from residents that would like to contemplate an amendment to the land management ordinance. How we've done that in the past is they will provide us a letter, as it's in your packet this afternoon, explaining what it is that they're doing, why they're asking for that request. We will bring that to the Planning Commission and ask you to consider whether or not you want to initiate that. As the chairman said, what happens after, if the planning commission says, yes, go forth and let's pursue this, we will go to work as it's our amendment and write text and bring it back to you for consideration. If you bless that text, it goes on to that committee with town council, which is usually the Community Services and Public Safety Committee. And then with their recommendation, we'll then move on to the full council. That's the process that we're following here this evening or this afternoon. Another example of that was a successful example of that, I believe, was the Islanders mixed use, which was a request from Mr. Davis in Spain several years ago. Came through this process where they approached town staff about an amendment. Town staff brought a request forward to the planning commission, and with planning commission's blessing, we moved that forward. So that's the process that we're here to outline for you today. Representatives of Abode are here in the audience this afternoon. If you have any specific questions about what it is their project, what they're trying to accomplish, they can certainly answer any of those questions. They can respond to the letter that's in the packet. But in short, in our staff report, we note that there is a site, and actually, let me just go to the site plan so we know exactly what we're talking about. So all of this area, I'm gonna break this too, because I don't know how to zoom. My zoom buttons are different than my regular computer, so bear with me. All this area that's outlined in blue is zoned medical or medical district. It also has over it what's called a Plan Development 2, a PD2 overlay. I believe it's the Palmetto Headlands overlay. A combination of that base district says that this is for medical purposes. It allows certain medical uses. It also allows some office uses. It even allows residential uses, but only in the form of a conversion. So a commercial conversion is how it's titled in the code. What that means is if there are existing non-residential buildings on a property, they can be converted to residential uses, and there is a square footage requirement or translation in the code. They can be converted to residential uses, provided those 20% of those units are for workforce housing. There are about 30,000 square feet of existing buildings on this property that's outlined in red. So this is the property in question off of Lamont Drive on the really kind of that back side of the hospital, that south side of the hospital. And then Bethia Drive that comes down. These are the former rehab buildings that are back there. There's about 30,000 square feet of current space. Those buildings are not in a condition to be rehabilitated or converted into residential, nor would it make any financial sense to convert those buildings into residential, especially at 30,000 square feet. The numbers just don't make sense. But there is an opportunity because there's, in red, there's a total of 12.6 acres of property, of which a lot of it is wetland. A lot of this area that you see here is wetland, but the area along this portion of the property is upland property and able to be redeveloped for other purposes, whether that's medical, office, or in this case, it's being proposed for housing purposes or workforce housing purposes. Let me go back up to the staff report. Oh. So the request here is to amend the medical district, or the request that's being made is to amend that medical district that would allow more ways to accomplish residential uses on the property other than just that conversion. What the developer would like to do, or what the proposal is, to take on those upland acres, add 126 units, residential units. These would be apartment, couple 3 stories tall building, 126 units, with 30% meeting up to 80% of their median income, which meets our definitions for workforce housing. And then the balance of the site being up to 150% of the area median income. Those workers would also be required to have what is the equivalent of full-time employment on the island. At least one of the worker or one of the occupants of each of those dwellings would have to be an occupant or have to be a worker on the island. And by full-time, we mean it's 30 hours is how we write that in our workforce housing agreements. If the commission wants to move forward with this or direct staff to move forward with this, we provided what the criteria are that you're going to be asked to look at. Is it in accordance with the comprehensive plan? Are there any change conditions? Is it demonstrated, does it address a demonstrated community need? Is it consistent with the purposes and intent of the zoning districts and the ordinance? Would it result in a logical and orderly development pattern? And would it result, or would not result in significantly adverse impacts on natural environment, including water, air, noise, stormwater management, wildlife, and so forth? So as you think about whether or not to initiate, as you're thinking about this from a very high level, these are the criteria that we look at. These are the criteria that you're required to look at. And as you start to think about these criteria, if you feel that this request can start to meet those, then we would advance this to actual drafting of ordinance and bring that back to you in August. There is a letter included in your packet in addition to a couple of maps for location and zoning. That highlights, I think grabbed some of the details as far as the bedroom mix. We'll have community clubhouse, pool, wellness center. Starts to lay out really some of those criteria, initial criteria for the housing development. One map I did not show is the surrounding zoning. So if this were to advance, the medical district would still be in place. We would just be amending the medical district to allow workforce housing, new construction workforce housing. And then the applicant would separately have to submit a zoning map amendment because that PD2 overlay I mentioned, they would have to submit a concurrent application that would amend that PD2 overlay that would basically say, you can't do residential anywhere in this brown area. It is limited to the area that we are talking about here. So that's the control that the developer is proposing with this. So it's not suddenly at the hospital site, it's going to be allowed to, the entirety of this hospital site is going to be allowed to have residential. It's going to be limited to this spot. So I think I covered everything from that standpoint. If you have questions on the application itself, I'm happy to answer those. Otherwise, we can move forward from there.
Sean, I'm comfortable with the first 5 of those criteria or considerations that you listed for us. But with the information we have currently, how would we know about that it would not result in significantly adverse impacts on the natural environment? We haven't seen anything that gives us that information yet. So how would we have assurance that one would be okay?
So the insurance would come through the development plan review process. And so there's a lot of regulations already in place that protect wetlands and require certain things. As I mentioned, there are wetlands on the site. There is no proposal as part of this, and this is where maybe Brian or Keith could come up and talk to you about a little bit about the wetland impact. There is no wetland impact that's being proposed that I'm aware of, but that would certainly be something that our other regulations that are in the code would help mitigate as well.
So in a future presentation, we'd be given more information to help us understand that better.
To help you understand that.
Okay. Well, and I certainly wanted to highlight Part C addresses a demonstrated community need. It totally does, and so I'm planning to support this.
And if I could on that last item too, it's by amending the zoning district, we aren't suddenly relaxing some control that would otherwise allow you to impact more trees, more wetlands, or anything like that. So all of the all the regulations that we currently have in place would exist despite this amendment. The amendment would only be to allow residential use into this district.
Question is, since it is a designated medical area, how do we know that this doesn't impede or impact future or anticipated medical needs, given the finite spaces that we have on the island? And are we adequately covered for the hospital or other medical needs in that specific area?
So there are additional properties that are available for medical. There are also, and also when we modify the medical district, we are not eliminating medical use from this. So long term, many years out, this could always convert back to something else. There's always that ability to do that, but there are other lands that are in this area, in this vicinity. There's a number of vacant properties even along Main Street that have a medical zoning or have zoning in place that can accommodate medical use. We also have other zoning districts on the island that, even though they are not zoned medical per se, they are zoned general or light commercial, and they also allow medical uses. So there are many other opportunities for medical uses on the island besides just our central campus that we think about as a hospital and having medical uses.
Other questions? Yes, Commissioner.
Hi, good, how are you?
So you mentioned the upland acreage would be what's covered, so out of the 12.6, how much is?
5.4.
So I noticed that you're, looking at 16.4105 to change. What specifically in the workforce housing, program, ordinance are you looking to change?
So in the workforce housing program, it lists what you can do in certain zoning districts. So in that workforce housing program, we would have to list medical, we would have to address some of the district requirements that are within that ordinance. So it talks about R4, it talks now about RM12 based on some recent changes we've had. And it talks about a number of other districts, including medical from a conversion standpoint. So we have to modify that language to not just only allow conversions, but also allow new construction. We're not changing what the definition of workforce housing is. It's still gonna be 80 to, I think it's 100% or 60 to 100% in our code, depending on whether it's rental or it's for sale. So none of those requirements are changing. It's simply to tie housing in the medical district back to workforce housing as new construction.
Zoning change contemplated to be, is that going to be like a spot zoning exercise?
No, it's still, the zoning will still be medical. All we're doing is we're allowing additional residential use within the medical district.
So you're changing the planned uses.
Medical district. Correct. So is there a code pulled up here by chance? Which one would I click on? Is this it? Nope. Yeah, sorry, I don't have the code to pull. I pull up the code and show you exactly what we're talking about, but I don't have that code
Yeah,
readily handed.
but I think you have the planned uses table.
Oh, it is up here. All right, I didn't scroll. Thank you. So right now, for residential uses in this district, we allow group living, so think assisted living, and we allow mixed use, multifamily, and workforce housing. What this is all pointing back to is that we allow these types of uses, but only as a conversion. So in this case, on this property, there's about 24 to 30,000 square feet of building on that property. That's all they would be allowed to do is convert that existing square footage, because it's non-residential, convert that to residential based on, there's a table in the code. I don't have that table here, but that's okay. There's a table in the code that is basically says for this site, for a studio unit, it has to be this many square feet, for a one bedroom unit, it has to be this many square feet. So they could take that 24 to 30,000 square feet and convert it into however many units they're able to yield based on those square footage requirements.
So with respect to that, the workforce housing program, since this is going to stay a medical zoning district, it's not going to be an RM4, there's no density bonus contemplated?
No, but we would establish a density in this code. So in this code, if I scroll down to the residential section, actually this has it mapped in. So this is what this was what the applicant's proposing. So the applicant's proposing to put in a 10 dwelling unit per acre. That's just what's allowed for for workforce housing. There's not a density bonus, there's not anything, because right now there is not a residential density in the medical district.
The last question, Edgewood Drive and Hilton Head Plantation, there are water problems back there. So how, as part of the development program,
Yeah.
are you going to be working with Hilton Head Plantation to deal with those water problems? Because it's backing right up into this area, and the buildings that are there are basically one story, low, usage. There's not going to be a lot of, I'm assuming it's not going to be it's going to be a lot more impervious cover there.
There will be more impervious cover,
Right,
and
so-
yes, there has been. Now, the town has not had specific conversation with Hilton Head Plantation at this point. I know the applicants have had conversation with Hilton Head Plantation. They engaged with them early and continue to be engaged with them through this process.
Questions?
Thank you for your presentation. I'm looking at consideration E would result in logical and orderly development pattern. In that context, my question to you is, what other zoning districts, if we approve this and it becomes changed, set a precedent by doing that, what other zoning districts could later come before us and seek similar concessions? Looking at light industrial,
So when
maybe
it comes to,
commercial, are there other ones that are in a similar position that would later come to us if we
So-
set this precedent?
so a lot of our commercial districts, a lot of our other districts are already allowing mixed use or residential use of some type. Many of our commercial districts, we have a number of mixed use districts where they are already allowing residential today at various densities, anywhere from 16 units per acre all the way down to 4 units per acre. It depends on the district. Now, I'm one that tends not be as concerned just professionally in my career with precedent, because the precedents are never the same. There's always different reasons for doing different things. In this particular case, when we think about medical district, when we think about the workforce, when we think about the impact to services on our island, it's a little bit different than an industrial district. It's a little bit different than some of these other areas. So I tend not to get concerned about it, but could someone certainly apply and ask to do something similar for another district? Yes.
Make similar arguments, with,
They
this
could.
isn't applicable, I can't convert this existing commercial building, I need to tear it down. and start it.
Potentially, but then we'd have to evaluate that at that point in time and see if that made sense. It may not make sense in that case. So we always have that ability, and that's where it's important as we make decisions about this, that we're clear in why we're making these decisions. We don't have to do that today to initiate, but when we go to approve something, that's where we just have to be very deliberate and very clear in why we're taking certain actions.
My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that the big change here is that it's new construction, correct?
That is the big change. A residential is allowed today, but only under converting
Conversion.
existing non-residential buildings to residential uses.
Big change would be new construction of residential
It
for
would be
workforce
new
housing.
construction, new residential construction is the change.
Report is.
On a quick question, so if we say proceed, let's work through this. The change would be to the entire medical district, not to the red outline. So you're not rewriting a map for that zoning area, saying it's something of a hybrid. This would be a change that allows new construction for residential throughout the medical district, correct?
Yes, but
I'm not saying it's good or bad.
no, the answer is we're introducing that use into the medical district, but that use is going to be conditioned. That condition, at least in how we're thinking about this, is one, you're allowed to build new residential construction under 2 conditions in medical district. One is that it has to be workforce housing. It has to meet those thresholds that you saw on the applicant's letter, that it's 30% up to 80% up, and then, 30% of the units up to 80% AMI need to be workforce housing. The other caveat to that will be, it has to be tied to a PD2 overlay where we limit or we identify exactly where in the medical district this is going. So let me get down to that map again. I'm sorry, I'm much better at navigating this for council meetings. This is a little bit different setup, so bear with me. So if this entire blue area is medical, what we're talking about is limiting the residential through the PD2 overlay to this area in red. It doesn't mean that this property that's probably a bad example, I think that's the library. It doesn't mean that this property up here could suddenly come in tomorrow and have by right residential zoning on it. They would have to come forward and amend the PD2, which is an action that would come before the planning commission, also have to go to town council in order to gain that right. So we are trying to put some limits on that because we want to be very protective of the medical zoning district for the reasons that Mr. Lobo mentioned earlier. It's an important zoning. We have a finite amount of it, and so that's how we're providing some protections to that zoning district.
Commissioners?
One more quick question, just because I like to verify this. Is the minimum lease on this 1 year, i.e. no short-term rentals?
The applicant is saying yes.
What percentage of the red area now is developed and what percentage is green space?
Can I have a better map up here? So the area that's developed right now, as you come in off of, Lamont Drive on the Bethia, there's a funeral home here right at the corner. I don't know if you can see my cursor, sorry. There's a funeral home right here at the corner. And then there are several buildings scattered along this area and around this cul-de-sac that's here right now. That's the limit of the development. So what would happen, at least what the plan is that development would extend a little bit farther down to incorporate some of the upland area that's down at the southern tip of the property. So still the same developed area to the northern end, but to the southern end, adding a little bit more space, adding a little bit more development to the site. All of this wetland would still be protected.
When was the last time a wetland survey was done on that property?
They will need to do another one, but I don't know if they, nope, they did one in February, so, yeah, they have one.
Okay. Would the applicant like to address the commission?
Good morning. Thank you very much for your time. I guess I will open it up with, are there any questions specifically for Brian Quinn and myself, Keith Kostreski of Abode? And we're also here with our partners representing CCDC as well.
Yes, Commissioner DuBois.
Thank you. I'd like a little bit more information about what exactly makes the existing buildings non-convertible.
They're not conducive. I don't know if you've been back there in a while. I think that question would be answered if you took a drive back there right now. You know, I mean, they're set up for rehabilitation facilities. There's a pulmonary center. There's medical offices that have, once Hurricane Matthew came through, those buildings were pretty much vacated, mainly because of all the abuse that they took during the storm. So if you go through the back area, which used to be some of the medical center, medical offices, I mean, the leaks have been going through there. You know, the roof's been leaking for 4 or 5 years straight. It's a moldy mess in there as well. And the layout itself, along with the parking, it's just not conducive to a conversion. And I think it's important also to note that, you know, as Sean had said, you know, a commercial conversion is a 20% conversion for workforce housing. We're proposing 30%, so we're trying to kind of one up it a little bit too, just to maybe even just sweeten the deal a little bit, you know, for it. But we're excited about, you know, the opportunity to kind of do some things a little different over there with the layouts and maybe even pull back some of that from Hilton Head Plantation. There's one building. Well, there's 2 buildings. There's a garage space and there's another building that's really right on that line. So we're pulling back kind of closer inland a little bit.
Has the ownership of this subject area changed hands, or has it remained consistent since the conditions that you described to now, seeking this new construction? Or has there been a new owner, or is it the same owner?
The Novant acquired the land with the acquisition of the hospital in February of 2024. And we will be, this land will come into a joint venture with the hospital, CCDC, and our team. And it'll be a joint venture that will control that with CCDC as a anchor partner in that joint venture, if that helps.
Questions? You mentioned that.
Learn how to use this mic. You mentioned the remaining 70% of the units to serve between 80 and 150% AMI. Any kind of feel for what that might look like? Because it, in theory, it says 70% could be at the 150 rate, or they could be at the 80% rate.
Absolutely. We've modeled it out that we have 30% at 80% AMI or below, and then we're staggering it between 100, 120, and some of the units at 150. So an equal split
Equally?
Equal split. We feel that, and it's very important to the hospital as well, which has been a wonderful partner, that it is a true community accessible to not only the healthcare staff, but teachers, service staff, fire and rescue, first responders. I even had a conversation with, my first conversation with Hilton Head Plantation. The board president said, can our staff live there? We have members coming 2 hours away to come work 3 12-hour shifts a week, 2 hours away to be security staff there. And it was the light in the room when we had that conversation. So we want to make sure the orientation of this project is to serve those in the community that do need our support. Thank you. You're welcome.
Questions? All right, any? Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Not that it's a purview of the planning commission, just out of curiosity, what do you expect the market rent to be?
The market rate? Oh, we do have an average market rate, but we will be 1, 2, and 3 bedroom mix, so that will vary. We've modeled, I can get back to you on that for the next presentation for the average rate. We're doing some research with CCDC on the demand for 1, 2s, and 3s. We have a nice model now, but we'll do a little sensitivity analysis on that, but I'll be able to share that with you our next presentation if we have the opportunity.
All right, anyone from the public would like to add their cents? Okay, well, let's thank you very much. Let's bring it back to the dais. Any further discussions before we ask for a motion? Can I get a motion? Yes.
I will make a motion that we move.
Do we have a sample motion that we can provide for Ms. Miller?
I think what you,
Okay, well, that's good. I like that. Would anybody like the second Commissioner Lebeau's motion? Okay, we've got second. Law. Okay, any more discussion on the topic? Okay, well, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed? Looks like it's unanimous. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. Okay, next up is public comment for any non-agenda items. Hannah, were there anybody sign up for that?
No, sir.
Okay, would anybody in the public like to make any comments on any non-agenda items? Seeing none, we're now at the chairman's report, of which there are none. Any staff reports? No staff reports. With that, may I get a motion to adjourn? So moved, and we're adjourned.
There you go.